Hello and thanks for joining me for Idaago's story. I am Echela Okori, aka Maddox One. Idaago's story began as a true life story series that I created in 2007 as a radio show. Due to popular demand, the show is back in this rebranded form. I hope you'll enjoy it. In this episode, I'll bring you a story titled The Day I Saw a Ghost. Idaago. Extraordinary stories of everyday people with Maddox Man. Idaago. Have you seen a ghost before? Do you believe in the existence of ghosts? When people scream in fear and say they saw an apparition, do you believe they did see a ghost? Or do you wave them away because you think they are only hallucinating? One early morning when I traveled to Otupa, my beautiful country home in Benue State, I stood by the road to Ankpa in Kogi State, which passes close to my family house, doing nothing. I just enjoyed the breeze and watched as cars speedily drove by. It was around 7 a.m. I was watching a heavy-duty truck drive down towards Ankpa when I felt a cold sensation. Turning to the right, I saw Blessing walking past me. Blessing was a distant relative with whom I attended family meetings. We always joked at meetings. She was a distant relative but very friendly towards me. Whenever I came home and saw her selling oranges, pepper fruits, groundnuts, or other seasonal produce, she would gift me some. She always insisted on gifting me her wares. Whenever I made to pay her, she would refuse the money. I hadn't seen Blessing in at least 2 years. As I watched her pass by me towards Ankpa, I wanted to say hello and tease her as usual, but I was tongue-tied. She too did not say hello, but looked at me straight in the eye when she walked past me. I felt a very cold sensation at that point. I shivered. As I watched her back, the atmosphere suddenly turned misty. Only a few moments ago, I could watch the heavy-duty truck drive down the straight road. But a few seconds after Blessing walked past me, I couldn't see her again. She melted into the mist and disappeared. Wondering what had happened, I crossed the road and went to visit my mother's younger brother, who is a palm wine tapper. Nothing like the early morning Otupa palm wine, always sweet and refreshing. As I sat with my uncle sipping fresh wine from a calabash, I told him that something strange had just happened before I came to his house. You know Blessing, the daughter of Mr. Peter, who sells groundnuts and oranges at the express road? I asked. Of course I know her, my uncle replied. She has been bedridden for months now, my uncle continued. She has been down for long with a sickness that has resisted all treatments. They have tried hospitals and herbal healers, but to no avail. Some people say she is suffering from AIDS. Why are you asking? That is not true, I said in shock. Maybe it is a different Blessing you are referring to. But if it is Blessing, the daughter of Mr. Peter, you mean, I just saw her walking down the road to Ankpa. My uncle and I described Blessing further by tracing her home, her mother, and whose daughter she was, as well as her father, and whose son he was. This is how we describe people in my place. Every person is called the son of his father and mother. This is to avoid any doubts as to the identity of the person being mentioned. It is taken further to grandparents, if necessary. When it was clear to my uncle and I that we were talking about the same Blessing, I told him my story. I recalled the strange sensation I felt when she walked past me. I told my uncle that it was equally strange that she and I did not exchange a word of greeting. Ordinarily, She would have teased me, or I would have found a joke to make her laugh. If really you saw her, that must have been her ghost you saw, my uncle said. She has been bedridden. A few minutes later, as we sat under a tree in my mother's father's home, chatting and sipping the fresh wine that had suddenly become sour in my mouth, we heard a scream from the direction of Blessing's home. The scream was characteristic of our traditional wailing to announce the death of a loved one. Blessing must have died, my uncle said. You saw her departing ghost. She wanted you to see her. We rushed to Blessing's home, and true to my uncle's guess, she had died. I do not believe that ghosts are real, but I did see something. I cannot deny that one.
Idaago. Extraordinary stories of everyday people with Maddoxman Idaago.
In another experience that someone had, this guy died. The tradition of his ethnic group requires that the door to his home remains open, never to be locked until he is buried. It is believed that he will come home every night to eat his supper unseen. Usually, when the man was alive, he would rise by 4 a.m. every morning and bathe by 4:30 a.m. in preparation for work. So on this early morning, following his death after a brief illness, his wife and her sister heard sounds of someone bathing noisily and whistling in his characteristic fashion at 4 a.m. Soon after, the toilet flushed noisily. Her husband's corpse had been deposited in the mortuary 3 days earlier when he died. There was nobody in the house aside her, their daughter, and her sister, who had come to condole with them at their trying time. Touching her sister and little daughter, who all slept in the same large bed with her, to confirm that no one else could be in the bathroom, she screamed in fear. "Who is there in the bathroom?" she asked in trepidation. An iron bucket knocked over. A cup fell noisily on the floor. Then there was silence, graveyard silence. Her older and wiser sister calmly told her to go back to sleep. She said she had heard the sounds too. Everywhere became quiet. The room suddenly became very cold. Reaching for the blanket, her sister pulled it over them before saying, "He has not been buried, so he'll be doing most of the things he normally does. Get used to it till he is buried. Do not be afraid. He won't hurt you. He loves you." We live in a strange world full of mysterious occurrences. There are so many things we cannot explain, especially the paranormal. Following the May 1, 2014 Nyanya Abuja bombing of a motor park by terrorists believed to be members of the Boko Haram sect, in which at least 19 people were killed and at least 60 others were injured. Several residents living close to the park, as well as security officers guarding the vicinity, swore that they heard several restless souls weeping and wailing in the middle of the night. Some say they also met ghosts of some of the victims, asking to be taken to the Nyanya General Hospital before vanishing into thin air.
Idaago. Extraordinary stories of everyday people with Maddoxman Idaago.
Now let me share this experience of a close friend with you. Some years ago, Sonny, a member of the Otupa Catholic choir, was on his way home from a Christmas carol tour at around 3 a.m. He had courageously escorted all the female choir members, one after the other, to their homes before heading home. When he got to the giant tree close to the main market junction by the express road, he saw the shadow of a man who commanded him to come close to him. Hypnotized by the apparition, he walked towards him. "Where is the home of Mr. Adama?" the figure asked. Sonny felt a cold sensation all over him. He felt like his head had become too heavy for him to carry. He wanted to run away, but he was suddenly without any energy. Everywhere was pitch dark, but he could see a bright light in the man's eyes. Then suddenly, the man vanished before his very eyes. He never knew when he began running, but his father says he came home running and screaming like a frightened cat, saying, "Father, Father, Father, please save me," before he fainted. His father had carried him inside a room and nursed him back to consciousness. However, Sonny could not talk for some time due to the shock of seeing a ghost. He would later discover that Mr. Adama, whose house he was being asked to describe the previous night, had recently died. People say it was Mr. Adama's ghost that had accosted him. He was warned to avoid staying out late nights going forward. So do you believe that ghosts exist or are imagined? What will you say about the following experience shared with me by one of my bosses at work? At an ICANN conference in Abuja, he saw his longtime friend who had also attended the conference. They had been close friends for years in Lagos. His friend's younger brother was also a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. Since the previous year's annual conference, they had not met or spoken on the phone. So my boss and his friend hugged each other and shook hands. "You are doing well. You dey enjoy you." They teased each other. Then my boss moved on, greeting old friends and professional colleagues. The annual accountants conference is a great time for networking, catching up with old colleagues, and getting new knowledge for accountants. I am also a member, so I know. Later in the day, my boss saw the younger brother of his friend, Idaago. They shook hands and laughed. Then my boss said he had already seen Idaago sitting close to the entrance. Looking sadly at my boss, his professional colleague said, "You couldn't have seen Idaago. Idaago died about 8 months ago. He died in a fatal accident." "What are you saying?" my boss asked incredulously. "Are you saying I don't know Idaago again? Don't forget that we were classmates in the university and have been friends for as long as I can remember. I am not saying you did not see him. You saw his ghost. Many others have also seen him after his death." Tears filled the eyes of Idaago's brother. Do you believe that ghosts exist? I ask you again. Let me share this last experience with you. In my secondary school days at St. James Seminary, Aliede, we had cause to run from our dormitories at night on many occasions for fear of being harmed by alleged ghosts. I never saw one, though. The first experience was in my Form 1, or what we now call Junior Secondary 1. It was long after lights out, and we were all peacefully fast asleep in our hundreds when the silence of the night was shattered by a piercing scream of "Ghosts! Ghosts! Run for your lives!" The cry to run for our lives rent the air. Several students shouted for everyone to run. In my dormitory, it was the unmistakable voice of the school's labor prefect who was screaming. We all ran out into the dark. 10-year-olds like me were crying. We were frightened beyond words. If seniors could be so afraid, we had no right to be brave. Some brave seniors got their torches before running out. We filed out to the Father Rector's residence in our hundreds. Father Rector pacified us, brought out several candles to light the night, Then we all marched back to our dormitories in company of the priest, who prayed with us, burnt some incense, and sprayed holy water all over the dormitories. Those who allegedly saw the ghosts told conflicting stories. A junior student said he saw a dwarf dancing close to his bed. He said the dwarf had huge teeth and a beard that swept the floor. The labor prefect said he saw two giants looking at the sleeping student through the open windows. We ran in like fashion at night several times before I graduated from minor seminary. At a point when I became more mature and mischievous, I and my friends would also pretend to be ghosts by covering our heads with white bed sheets. Then we would go outside the classes of seniors to dance and sing, "Ghost, ghost, ghost, ghosts." We would hide and laugh when they screamed and ran for their dear lives. That's all we have for you in this episode. Did you enjoy the story? If yes, then like, comment, share it with others. Remember to like and follow Idaago's story page for more fascinating stories. Thanks for listening.